of the depths I called on the Lord. Out of the depths. What depths? Well, you know, sometimes you get out of your level and you find yourself in the deep part. And you find yourself sinking. And if you can't swim, it's scary. In the Hebrew, the depths was considered Sheol. That's hell. That's death. Out of my depths. That's when you have no power. You have no way out. You don't see anything. You can't find a way. You're stuck. And you can see no hope or help coming. That's the depths. That is a black hole that you sit in. And you see nothing. Out of the depths, I called on the Lord. I asked the Lord, hear my petition. I know, Lord, that if you counted all our sins, we could never stand before you. The name of this sermon is Patience, but I want to talk about sin. A lot of times we find ourselves in a hole because of sin. Things happen. Things go backwards, sideways, and we're in a hole. What is sin? Well, Paul says in Romans, we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We've all sinned. That's a nice collective, we all sin. But what is important is when you claim your sin. I sin. I sin. We all sin. We personally sin. We know that. It's okay. The other problem we have with this sin thing is we think there's big sins, and then we think there's small sins. And the small sins aren't as big as the big sins. Big sins are things where you end up in the law, facing a judge, jail. You broke human law. Not only God's law, but human law. That's a big sin. But those little sins, what are they? You can get away with little sins. Selfishness, unfriendliness, hateful speech, an unruly temper, those hasty words, actions coming out of frustration that you just can't take it anymore. Those are the small sins. And do they have any repercussions on you? Oh, you say, well, no, nobody comes and arrests me for being selfish. No one comes and arrests me because I said some nasty things to somebody who cut me off. No. You see, you think there's no problems with those little sins. But there is a problem with those little sins because the more little sins you have, they make you a big sinner. They sort of compile on top of each other. And you've got to understand what sin is. Sin is a repudiation of God. You're obstructing God. Sin is actually the opposite of God's love. When you sin, you spit in God's face. You offend him. You must remember that God is love. God is love. Remember the 2 commandments that Jesus claimed were the most powerful was love your God. Love your God and love your neighbor as yourself. You see, the key words in there are love. And the last commandment he gave to his disciples before he departed was, you must love each other. You must love each other. Must. You must love each other. Remember when the man came to Jesus and said, my brother has transgressed against me. How many times do I got to forgive him? 2, 3, 4 times? When can I quit? Jesus says, 7 times 70. 7 times 70. And I'll tell you, that can be wearing. That can be real wearing. That's like, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't take it anymore. But you see, that is the type of love that God has for us, that Jesus had for us, that he'd go to the cross because he died for us out of love. Love. Love is the opposite of sin. Because when you don't love someone for whatever reason, it's easy to go against them, to sin against them, to ignore them, to be selfish, unneighborly, lose your temper with them. Hey, I understand that. There are times when I lose my temper. I don't like it, but I do. And there are times when I think, I get angry with people. I don't say anything, but it's in my heart. And you know what the Bible says, if it's in your heart, it's there. That's a seed. And that is also a sin. So you got to be real careful with this thing. Well, why? What is the result of sin? The result of sin is a deterioration of your character. Your character? I like the one example they gave me. They said there was this pristine lake. It was a beautiful lake. And then they start to dump sewage in it. And it changed the character of the lake. That's what sometimes happens to us. We come out and come through the baptism and we are pure. But things happen and garbage happens and this sewage happens and there's a little bit of this selfishness, unneighborliness, temper, those little things. And that's our character. And when we erode that character, when we have to make decisions about what we say and what we do, it gets real cloudy. We don't see those moral certitudes. Certitudes, that's not a word. We do not see those moral laws that we are supposed to live by. We lose our ethics, the rules we live by. They get cloudy. The Boy Scouts have this interesting experiment they do for ecology. I was at camp one time when it went bad. They were really upset. They take a big kettle of water and they fill it with cold water and they throw a frog in it. And then under the kettle they put a little fire. Not a big fire, just a little fire. Little fire, little fire. A little fire keeps burning. It heats. Heated up the kettle, heated up the water. Gradually, just gradually. Frog didn't care. Oh yeah, I can deal with this. Yeah. You know what happened to the frog in the end? Can you guess what happened to the frog in the end? Oh, that's why they were upset. They weren't supposed to kill it. They didn't get it out in time. The frog didn't try to get out because the frog is just sitting there. It gets a little warmer, a little warmer, a little warmer. That's what happens to us. We live in a world that is surrounded with sin. It surrounds us, and we are considered fools if we do not do certain things, which really are sins. Unfriendliness, unneighborliness, losing our temper. And I got to tell you something. Looking at the news and what's going on in this world, it's really, why would you have a fight in an airplane? You're up in the air. It's like, let's go play on the edge of a cliff, I don't understand. There seems to be this underlying anger. And it's playing out. That's what surrounds us. And that's what we have to be aware of. Know it. Don't do it. Know it. The Psalm says, if you counted our iniquities, that's sin, we could not stand before you. But you are a forgiving God, and we fear you. Why do you fear a forgiving God? Can you think of the amount of love he had? It's beyond our human comprehension. If you remember the Wizard of Oz, when they, at the very end, when they came in and they saw the great, wonderful Wizard of Oz, and he with his big face, and he's roaring, and they're in awe, until they discovered the little man behind the sheet. Anyway, that's how we should feel before God. His power, his immense love that could sustain him through us, through all the weirdness that we do as humans. And he still loves us. And he's still willing to forgive us. Willing to forgive us. But you have to own your sin, and you have to recognize how that sin can corrupt your life. And then out of the depths, you petition the Lord and say, Lord, forgive me. Forgive me. We've all sinned. I sin. We all sin. But we have to personally take our sin to the Lord and ask forgiveness. I wait upon the Lord. I wait upon the Lord. My soul waits upon the Lord. What's a soul? Someone asked me that. I said, that's the difference between quick and dead. Quick's the old English word for being alive. What is that difference? What changes from life to death? What is that little twink? Is it just the electronics in your brain dying? Or is it the spirit leaving the flesh? My soul is in a body of flesh. That's my soul. My being is in this body of flesh. My soul waits upon the Lord. It's not only my flesh, it's my soul. If you've ever had to go to the hospital for an emergency, and you're sitting in the waiting room, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, as the watchman looks for the morning sun, you're waiting. You're waiting for the good word. You're praying for the good word. You're hoping for the good word. My hope is in the word of the Lord. You say, well, I don't know how I can do it. Hey, it's in here. It's your manual, folks. My husband says you should always read the book that comes with whatever comes. He always, at one car we got, he wouldn't drive it till he read the book. The second, he had to read the whole book, and then he had questions for the dealer. What's this mean? What's this mean? Me, he put in the car and said, push that button and go. I didn't know how to turn on the windshield wipers. I didn't know how to turn on the lights. I didn't know anything. I'm there going, wonder what that button's for. Maybe I better not touch it. As a Christian, this is your book. This is your manual. When you're in doubt, or you're in fear, or you're questioning, or you're in the depths, this is your lifeline. My soul waits for the Lord. My soul waits for the Lord. Why? My soul waits for the Lord because he has great love for me. And they had a word there. It was plenteous redemption. Plenteous. You know what the word plenty means. You go to a meal and you sit down and, picnics are coming back in vogue now. And you always have plenty of food. Plenty. That's plenteous. There's food, so much food. That's how much redemption he has for us. So where does this patience come in? How do you keep yourself out of those little sins? How do you keep yourself reminding yourself? And I remember, my husband made me do this for many years. It was called fire prevention. The one thing we always drilled into the kids, Always drilled into the kids. Always drilled into the kids. You know what it was? Stop, drop, and roll. And I thought about that, and I said, that's what you got to do with your daily life. When you suddenly find yourself losing your temper, being unfriendly, being unneighborly, doing one of those little sins, stop. Think about what you're doing. Drop to your knees and pray. God will roll it away. He'll roll it away. It is easy to get into a habit. It's hard to break a habit. And sometimes those little sins are habits that we've got to break. And the only way you're going to break it is to stop. Pray to the Lord. I put my hope in the Word because of God's steadfast love and His plenteous redemption. It ends up with the last word that says, and He shall redeem Israel from its iniquities. That's not a question, that's a statement. And it's future tense. So you have a God who's here now with you, who is watching over you, who's guiding you and guarding you. At the same time, He will be with you always if you look for Him. The book. Remember the book? Do you want to know why we keep giving the kids books? Keep giving them Bibles. That's our manual. And I know that sometimes you look at the Bible and you say, I don't understand it. These words don't make any sense. And this, where did they have all these genealogy? Hey, the Word is in there. And if you read it, you're instilling it in your spirit and in your soul. And it's strengthening it so that you can withstand those little sins and the big sins. God forbid you ever do any of them. It's those little sins that will trip you up. And you've got to recognize them, and you've got to ask forgiveness for them. Or you will find yourself in the depths, pleading with God for forgiveness. Take it to God. He'll hear you. Because He is a forgiving God. Over, and over again. Not humanly possible, you say. God's not human. That's the difference.